In this episode, we're going to be discussing phases 3 and 4 of our 5-step creative process. In this phase, our goal is to take the ideas that we've explored and begin to discover what lies beneath. Then we will refine what we discover until we come out the other side with a working concept, much like this example. When I teach my students how to draw the human figure, I take things back to the most basic that they can be. When I started drawing figures, I had a really hard time understanding something called proportions, or the relationship between objects in space. And so, with the human figure, which is one of the most complicated things that you can draw, I decided to start teaching my students in this way. We break everything down into basic shapes, and so we start with these 3 landmarks: the head, the chest, and the pelvis. And by doing this and connecting them with a line, it will help us keep everything in proportion. A really cool exercise I like to show my students as well is if you start with a line of motion, like this curved line, then you can come through and add these 3 landmarks, the head, the chest, and the pelvis, on. You can start adding these 3 basic landmarks on your motion line and try to visualize how these shapes overlap, how they connect, and how they function together. It could be an S line, it could be a curved line, any type of line you can come up with. I encourage my students to go crazy because the crazier you get, the more you have to think about how things fit in space. Doing this exercise will help you become better at anatomy drawing because it helps you understand the relationship or how to keep things in proportion. Once you do this long enough, then you can come through and start to add things like your limbs, your arms, and your legs. Alrighty, whenever I begin a new character or I'm trying to figure out how something is going to work in my world, I usually start with a scale like this. Now, this isn't something I've created on my own. It's something that's been around for a long time. In fact, in comic books, you might see people use what we call the 8 head high or the 9 head high scale. In my story here in Luminoria, I'm going to use a 7 head high scale. And so the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to block in the 3 landmarks. And I want you to pay attention specifically to where everything is going on this scale map. Okay, I'm going to line up certain points of these landmarks so that they connect and are in proportion with everything else. The shape of that chest is more like a cup upside down, a hollow cup, and the shape of the pelvis is more like a bowl. It's kind of getting dumped forward. The shape of the head is more round or kind of in an oval shape. Once I've got the 3 basic landmarks here blocked in, I can start adding things like my limbs. And I'm drawing a male in this example, so I want to make sure I have that upside down kind of triangular shape to the upper torso where the shoulders are wider than the hips. Notice where the elbows are landing, right about the bottom of the rib cage. Notice where the hands and the wrists are. Notice where the hands land, about halfway through the thigh. My knees are ending up on the bottom of line 5, and then my feet and my ankle area are down towards the bottom with line 7. I'm going to take a minute here and kind of just check everything, make sure all of my points are where I want them to be, because from here, I'm going to be adding onto this drawing, and if this part is kind of a little off, it can affect the rest of the drawing in total. Once I feel comfortable with the way my skeletal frame looks, then I can come through and start adding the basic shapes for the muscles. Now, I don't want you to go crazy here. I want you to think in terms of what are these groups of muscles in terms of basic shapes. So I'm going to think about all of these muscles we have in our neck. I'm just going to put those down to 2 lines. And then for the trunk or the core, I'm going to connect the upper torso to the pelvis, that chest to the pelvis with 2 lines as well. Then I'm going to come through and start thinking about what are the groups of muscles in the upper arm and the shoulder area. I'm not thinking in terms of individual muscles here, I'm thinking in terms of a large group of muscles. The hands are just going to be reduced down to a block for now. The upper thighs get the same treatment as the arms, those kind of elongated oval shapes. And then I'm going to take a step back here and really make sure that everything looks clear again before I go on to the next phase. If your underdrawing is nice and accurate and clean for you to read, then everything you stack on top of it will be much better. In this third and final layer, I'm thinking now in terms of the details. So what's going on in those bottom two layers is going to help inform this drawing on the top. For the face, I'm just going to block in a really simple face. And then I'm going to come down to the body and start thinking about how those different groups of muscles are interacting, how they're overlapping, and what the contour or the outside line of this body will look like. I'm going to show you this process again, but this time I'm going to use my character concept sheets from the characters from Samara. Okay, I've got both a female version and a male version here. And now I've taken the time to already draw everything in my scale. I've made sure that everything is where I want it to be and everything is looking good. I'm still thinking about those basic shapes, and you can see them kind of underlying here. But now I'm going to overlay this piece of tracing paper and show you again, kind of step by step, how we can build up the human anatomy, starting first with our skeletal frame, then overlaying the basic shapes for the muscular frame, and then finally we arrive at the top layer, which is the skin layer. In this phase, I'm thinking just strictly about the lines. Okay, I want to make sure that everything is in proportion, that everything looks nice and neat, because again, you're going to build the rest of your drawing off of this first phase. The upper chest, think again about like a cup that's upside down, a hollow cup, and then that pelvis is like a bowl that's tipping forward. And here I go lifting up the tracing paper so you can see the underdrawing. I'm going to do the same thing with the male here in just a minute, but I'm going to speed up the process so you guys can see it come together. And here we are revealing the male skeletal structure. Nice and simple. Ready for the next layer. In this layer, I'm going to use this red marker to outline the big shapes of the muscle groups. Again, I'm not thinking in terms of individual muscles. I'm thinking of what do these groups of muscles look like as a big shape. That's going to help me really make sure that everything looks nice. If you want to know the secret to drawing anything in life, it's figuring out what complex objects are made out of in terms of simple shapes. So if you're drawing a car, what simple shapes can you find? If you're drawing a building, what simple shapes can you find? If you're drawing a character or a creature, what simple shapes can those more complex things be broken down into? Once you start from there, you can reconstruct how to draw it and how you see it. And once you change your perspective and you start seeing the world in that way, I promise you, you're going to become a much better artist. You're going to level up your skills almost overnight. Alrighty, now it's time to put the final touches on these overlay drawings. So I'm going to come through again with my Sharpie and start outlining the top level. Everything that's underneath those other two layers are informing this final drawing. And again, I'm thinking about how these groups of muscles are interacting with one another, how they're overlapping, how they're connected. Thinking about how the rib cage shows through on the first part of the abdomen, and then the ab muscles take over all the way down to the pelvis. I'm thinking about the curvature of the thighs and how I can show a little bit of form here, and then how the knees connect to the lower leg areas. Touches. Here's our finished overlapping female drawing. I'm going to do the same exact process now with the male. And with that, we've got our finished male. Alrighty, if you haven't ever tried this process, I would definitely recommend doing it. It will inform your drawing in so many different ways. And if you do try this process, I want you to remember three things. First, starting with those three main landmarks: the head, the chest, and the pelvis. I want you to think about simple shapes, because the simple shapes will help you make more refined characters. It will help you also build greater detail. Starting with these very basic kind of flat 2D concept sheets, I'm going to use these to help me inform the drawings that I make for my final character concepts, which you'll see here in just a moment. You're going to see the process now from start to finish. I usually use reference in everything that I do to make sure that it's accurate. And so here in the beginning, you'll see the reference images. And then I'm just going to let the process play so you can kind of sit back and enjoy. One of the awesome things about having a finished character concept sheet is now I can take that and start overlaying different types of costumes. I can come up with completely new looks for this character based on the drawing I've made. And you'll see me here now starting out with the male again, starting with those basic shapes, coming through with my lines, and again, I'm going to let the process play out. If you're just starting on the path to drawing anatomy, I hope that you've gained some helpful insights to help you approach it and maybe not be so scared. If you've been drawing anatomy for a long time like me, I hope you've also come through with a better understanding of how you can add these things that I've talked about to your process. I come back to the basics quite often, and I've been doing this for a long time as well, and it really helps me get back to making sure I understand the foundational principles. Let's make wonder into something real, and I'll see you guys in the next one.